Welcome to Crimson Tales. Support me by subscribing my channel and like, comment, share my videos. Before Harry knew it, as time just seemed to slip away for him over the last few weeks, a holiday he used to dread since he began Hogwarts has come back around. Its name was known as Halloween, or Samhain. Over the last 5 or so weeks, besides a few minor hiccups, mainly from hosting his study group, life was going smoothly. He did have a few issues with Ron and Hermione, but that was more not hanging around to listen to them bicker. So between classes, his small study group, and larger study group, Harry found himself pretty busy for the most part. Even if it hurt, and he got frustrated, listening to Ron complain a couple hours a week as they tried to learn to become animagus, between his and Dumbledore knowledge and a mixture of talents with a bit of ancient text, the two managed to compile a new way to become an animagus. While it was less dangerous, it would take longer to learn unless one completely focused. On the upside, however, one could eventually learn to have multiple forms. The first form, though, is still chosen based on experience and personality. After that, though, it is mainly up to the wizards and witches on what they want to change to. The method they came up with was fairly simple in concept, but hard to execute. In the first step, besides finding out what animal you are, you have to begin transforming your hand. This cannot be done with a wand, but has to be on your own magic, and will. Harry, please rejoin the Quidditch team. A tall and slightly burly teen broke Harry of his musing. The teen in question was on his knees almost bowing to him, as his eyes, "Oliver, you do know my schedule is packed. I don't really have time to practice." "Come on, Harry. None of this year's Seekers can hold a candle to you. They can't be that back." "Harry, I kid you not. I spotted the snitch 10 minutes before they spotted even a hint of it, and I am the keeper." Since they were currently having this conversation in the Gryffindor common room, they heard a loud bang from one of the corners. There a girl, which Harry assumed was a 3rd or 4th year, burst into tears. Next to her, a boy, probably in the same year, glared at Oliver with a gaze full of hate. Clearly, they were two who tried out for the position. However, from the glares and hateful looks, they weren't even considered for the reserves, much less the actual spot. As Harry saw the burly teen expression, Harry soon caved, counting himself lucky he doesn't need as much sleep anymore. Those eyes reminded him of his children, and it soon took his will of resisting. "Very well, I can't promise to be at every practice, but I will play." As if Christmas came early, Oliver cheered before running off. Rolling his eyes at the antics, Harry decided to pull out an older tome. Inside were spells and concepts, a bit darker in nature on rituals. It wasn't something that would get him in trouble, but would make certain individuals frown. A few hours later, as Harry was sitting outside the Great Hall, reading, he was waiting for Daphne to appear as Katie was sitting with her 2 chaser friends, while she would still follow him, should he ask, due to her instincts. Most just treated as she was madly in love with him, which he nor her corrected. "Potter, what do you think you're doing?" A haughty and sneery tone broke his concentration on the current passage. "Well, I would assume sitting here fully clothed reading due to the book in hand. You do know what a book is, Snape?" Harry asked sarcastically, while he mostly broke out of his habits Halloween after the fall of Voldemort. It seems that being brought back in time brought out his sarcastic side. When his emerald eyes landed on the potion professor for the older students and saw a sneer, he just smiled, as he decided to act like the man was confused. "You see, a book is when papers are stacked together and hold information. They usually have soft or hard covers to help protect them and can last centuries if cared for right. I know what a Potter book is. 10 points from Gryffindor and detention for your sarcastic tone to a professor." Snape sneered. "Now, boy, answer me, why are you outside the Great Tale?" "I am waiting for someone by loitering around here," Harry answered with a sigh as the sneer only grew on the man-child face. Instead of saying anything else, the man just left missing the 2 eye rolls as Daphne appeared by Harry's side. "How that man can hold his jobs is a miracle in itself." Daphne grumbled as she knew his true purpose. However, even that has limits. "Well, enough about the man-child. So, dear, how was your day?" Harry changed topics as they entered the Great Hall. It wasn't that unusual anymore to see the two together, especially since Harry began hosting his study group to most of the school, so barely anyone batted an eyelash at them together. Now, instead of heading towards either the Gryffindor table or Slytherin table, Daphne led him towards the Hufflepuff table, or more exact Susan Bones. After some consideration and a coin toss between her and Penelope, she was the first in line for Harry to seduce and sleep with on the Daphne list she began making. I wonder if we will form a bond. I remember helping her out quite a bit in our 5th year, Harry mused to himself, but loud enough for Daphne to hear him. From mostly guesswork and interacting with her, I will say it is a fair chance. I can safely say, however, Hannah and Penelope are a low to 0 chance, currently. Luna, well, she is Luna, so it might take a bit for her bond to form. What about Tracy, since we are going through our small study group? A small frown appeared on Daphne's lips at the mention of her friend. I honestly don't know. As they took the empty seats across from Susan with her lovely red hair and growing body, they silently agreed to drop the subject for the time being. After all, they will have to start seducing the girl. How was your potions class today, Susan? Harry asked as he flashed her a slightly dazzling smile. Susan just shrugged as she gave him an uninterested response. It was okay. Professor Slughorn had us review ingredients and make some healing salve for burns and boils. Is something wrong? Daphne asked. No, I just have a sudden repulse from Harry. I wonder why. A frown quickly found itself across the two lips as they studied their friend. There weren't any indications of her being potions, but then again, not all potions have signs to see. Should we get Madame Pomfrey to check you over? I will go later. Susan dismissed their worries as the food appeared on the table. Only able to nod, Harry began filling his own plate, as well as Daphne's. It wasn't until halfway through the meal did Harry wonder how this scene was going to play out. Last time around, he was with Hermione and Ron at nearly Headless Nick death party, only to find on the way back Mrs. Norris Mr. Flitch cat petrified. I wonder how the large basilisk was even able to enter the hall. After all, wouldn't it be stuck in the pipes if there are no exits? Harry wondered how the large snake got out into the hallways without being seen. It is, after all, nearly 70 feet long, unless there are more entrances to the Chambers of Secrets. Hey, I've been wondering about this, but has there been a lack of pranks from the Weasleys twins this year? Susan asked, breaking Harry's thought. It is because they, alongside their other brothers and sister, have to work around the castle to pay for their tuition. Daphne shrugged. Huh, I thought they were doing fine since they were doing fine the last few years, Susan said. Their financial helper, who didn't know about being a helper until recently, cut them off. So, until they can get that sorted out, they have very sparse gold on hand. Harry filled in since, while kept on the den low, was still known to most adults. Susan just nodded and wisely changed topics until the grumpy squib came running, ranting angrily. Someone has killed my cat. His voice rang throughout the great hall. A few students actually cheered, as the cat must have terrorized them more than others. Standing up from his chair, Dumbledore quickly calmed everyone down. Perfect. I ask that you keep everyone here for the time being. Hopefully we can get to the bottom of this and the culprit punished. Chatter soon broke out as Dumbledore left alongside a few other teachers. Harry, who knew he would probably be filled in later, just sat ideally by for the moment. After all, what use would going after them and giving birth to some new and crazy rumor? The next day, the school was in a rather depressed and chaotic state. Everyone wondered who the heir was and who wanted to kill all the Muggleborns, which put some of the known or innocent Death Eater children under pressure. Hey, Scarface, you better keep your mudblood on a leash. It would be a shame if she died. A blonde, slick-back hair preteen called out. His tone clearly held a sarcastic tone. You sound pretty confident about this, Malfoy. Are you perhaps the heir? Harry smiled innocently. Since this trade took place in the Great Hall, the rumor mill instantly got a jump on it. Whispers were heard and many began shying away from Draco. It didn't help his case that he always promoting the Death Eater motto since last year, which was that Muggleborns don't belong in the magical world. Seeing that his reputation took a large dive and most of the school turned their backs on him, Draco stomped away, wondering how he could save his reputation now it was in shambles. Sitting in an abandoned classroom, Harry was listening to Daphne snort from laughing too hard. Besides finding great enjoyment in Draco's misery, she even fueled the rumors. While it was true that Draco matured after Hogwarts and married her sister, Daphne didn't care much about the man during or after Hogwarts. 7 years of prancing around does this. So was the blasted cat petrified? Daphne asked as she calmed down from laughing so hard. Yes, but it seems that either the basilisk or the heir stepped on the cat's tail. Now they don't know if the tail can be saved or not, so there might be a tailless cat running about. Thrown into another fit of laughter, Daphne continued laughing as she pictured the scene. A few days later, the rumors soon died down, for the most part. However, most half-bloods and Muggleborns gave a large curve around Draco, mainly to irritate the blonde and get some revenge for all name-calling he does. Besides his small talks with Dumbledore during his lessons, when they are both available, Harry just carried on his days per normal, practice some Quidditch, go to classes, host a study group, and do homework. While most treat his study group in the Great Hall as the actual defense class compared to Lockhart's, a few still went to his classes, which were mainly his fangirls, who still believed he was better. Now, in a last-ditch effort to one-up Harry, Lockhart decided to sponsor his dueling club. While it was a bit earlier by a few weeks than last time around, Harry decided to give a word of warning to most to not waste their time. While there were some protests, most nodded in agreement, but still wanted to check it out, for a laugh, if nothing else. While a small bit of him was a bit disappointed, the man decided to host it during one of his lessons with Dumbledore, so Harry couldn't watch as Snape launched the fraud across the stage like a rag doll. Later, Daphne, who went to watch in order to tell him how it went, he was surprised that the man actually tried to slander a 12-year-old. While Lockhart tried to degrade Harry's lessons, in the end he actually lost quite a bit of supporters. Sadly, he couldn't watch as Professor Flitwick launched the man and played with the man with first-year spells. It would appear that Snape was busy this time around. "Sir, shall we do anything about the basilisk yet? The next attack, if I remember correctly, is in the very near future," Harry asked as he was chatting with Dumbledore. "Was there anyone killed last time around?" "No, but do you honestly want to take the chance? These are students' lives, and I rather they not miss months of their lives as the mandrakes grow." While he wondered why they just didn't import them last time around, Harry later learned it was a very difficult task to transport mandrakes. They are very sensitive and have about a 3-day lifespan once they begin moving from where they were grown. "Do you have a plan? If you kill the basilisk, you risk tipping off Riddle. We can always just take the diary and store it away for the time being. Then he wouldn't know." Dumbledore thought about the suggestion, and Harry watched as his shoulders visibly slump. Clearly, he thought about Ginevra being possessed and the effects it might have. Taking it away now, since the girl has been clearly writing in it before school, the diary should have had a decent hold. "I don't think that possible at the current time." Harry just sighed at his mentor. "Sir, we can just destroy the diary. If we kill the snake and make it look like it died to age, we can just ambush her while down in the chambers and destroy the Horcruxes, releasing her from the influence. I have thought of this, but how sure are you that she will be released?" Dumbledore stated, which made Harry nod. Just because it happened last time, it might not this time. Research. In the following weeks, besides researching and grudgingly sending a letter to the goblins, Harry and Dumbledore awaited word back from the Gringotts Cursebreakers. Besides doing that, Harry has been busy slowly wooing Susan with Daphne help. Even if he managed to snag both Daphne and Fleur in the future, he was clueless on girls and not to mention the ones this young. "Hey love, how is Broom?" Harry asked as he sat next to Katie in the common room. It was currently late at night and only a few stray couples were up. "It's pretty good. Why do you ask, my alpha?" "Today, during practice, it took a pretty good beating. Expressly between your lovely thighs and legs." Harry Lousy flirted and only got a small blush for his efforts. The actual purpose for asking was he wanted to figure out a gift as he wanted to do something nice for her. Being a second year and really only having the castle to move about in, it didn't leave Harry with many options for a date, so he figured why not mail order a couple gifts for his girls and friends. Of course he decided to send Fleur some charmed underwear as well as Daphne. Since they loved it last time around, it would be a shame not to have another set, even if he had to make some changes to the bra charm. There aren't any mountains to climb yet. Now instead of climbing mountains, it had Harry eating an ice cream sundae with cherries on top. While it may take a moment to get it, he's sure the two will understand. After all, they did hang out in the mundane world from time to time. "My broom is well cared for, so don't worry about it. Now your broom, I might be testing out again," Katie answered with lust entering her voice. "Yes, they say testing is never complete," Harry nodded sagely. "I hope you will continue to test it forever. I and others may have to do so." Katie whispered seductively into his ear. "Yes, my nympho." It would be nearly 2 hours later before either returned to their room, much to their roommate questioning looks. From the looks, it would be a few years for Harry's roommates to realize, while Katie's would just giggle and blush hard. In the following days that came, Harry camped out in the library, researching water phoenixes, while he can change into his wolf form now, like an animagus, with some work to shorten the shift. Both Dumbledore and Daphne said that he could probably register by the end of the year and add a layer of protection to himself. Hermione was also in the library, researching her animal across from him. From what he knows, she is a crow, found somewhere in America. In his mind, it fit her perfectly, as he held a list of animals and their symbolism. From what he knows of a crow, they are: guidance, while working in shadow, moves freely in the void, understands all things related to ethics, secret magic of creation, thief, trickery, boldness, skill, cunning, single-mindedness, a bringer of knowledge, swiftness, eloquence. Harry thought it fit Hermione pretty well, as she used her statues as a war hero and his fame to push her forward. Now that he thought about it, most of her achievements were mostly from his friendship with her, so that was pretty cunning, and she was pretty single-minded once she made up her mind. Too bad for her, it might be the same way this time around. While he might still hold a distant friendship with her, it by no means will it be close, or her being able to use it to boost her career. As for Ron, once he found out it was a snake, he decided to end his thoughts of becoming an animagus. Since his views were still hardcore and biased against the Slytherin and his hatred for snakes, he just gave up the entire study, not caring if he can choose his second form or not. While Harry was reading in the library, the attack he was waiting for happened. The next morning, the news of Colin Creevey being petrified ran rampant through the school. Harry could nearly feel the fear filling the Great Hall at how heavy it hung around. This time without anyone to even blame, within reason. Most of the students didn't know how to handle and listlessly guided jumping at any loud or sound coming from behind. Harry, who knew how to solve this, looked towards Dumbledore. If the man didn't agree soon, he might just go deal with the snake before someone actually dies. He can deal with the fallback afterwards and hope he can deal with whatever happens. Once the aged wizard's blue eyes linked with a barely visible nod happened between the two. Satisfied as Dumbledore agreed, Harry mentally prepared himself to face off against the snake. After class, glancing over to Ginny, watched as a tip of her lips curve upwards as she ate silently. Throughout the rest of the day, as Harry raised his fighting spirits for what is coming, he felt things aren't going to be as easy like he assumed it would be. The nagging feeling at the back of his mind and stomach told him so. However, since it must be done before dies like with Moaning Myrtle, he could only push forward, hoping it will work out in the end. Once the last class came to an end, Harry silently slipped away. However, he missed a certain Bushy watching and following after him. Since he was so focused on the task at hand, the fact he was being followed by her for the last few weeks slipped his mind. Luckily for Harry, Daphne moved to intercept the stalker. While she might not know what he exactly has planned, she was sure it involved the basilisk. A small part of her was afraid for her lover, but she had confidence he would return to her unharmed. If not, she would resurrect him and kill him again before resurrecting him for Fleur. Going somewhere, Granger? Daphne asked with a slight coldness in her voice. It is true, Harry knows about Hermione, but it slowly grinds on her nerves. Truthfully, Harry doesn't really mind leaving behind their grievances from their future for the most part. However, that doesn't mean he doesn't want revenge for some of the actions done to him. But in Daphne's case, she held a grudge as the brown hair girl grinded her nerves, following them everywhere. If that wasn't enough, she had the nerve to say some of the magical world's traditions from long ago, or even now, is barbaric. While truthfully, Daphne knew where the Muggle-born was coming from, as some ancient or past rituals are. One doesn't walk into a new culture and insult it to all who will hear, then demand respect. The world just doesn't work like this. What do you want, Daphne? Hermione asked with a slight bossy tone, which Daphne later learned was a coping mechanism. While Daphne had no problem with the tone due to mentally older due to her memories, it was when Hermione was bouncy side to side, trying to follow Harry with her eyes that got her. You need to stop following Harry like a stalker. While he doesn't really care, it is grating on my and his other friends' nerves, Daphne stated as she gripped the other girl's shoulders. Hey, slimy snake, what do you think you're doing? Ron, who was held back, exited the classroom, shouted. As the redhead pulled out his broken wand, he tried to cast a curse at her. What curse? The idiot redhead tried. Daphne had no clue as the spell backfired. sending the boy crashing into the castle wall. The wand in question was all but barely hanging together, making the girl wonder how the teacher allowed him to use it. I know the Weasleys are doing work around the castle to pay for their school fees. However, I am sure they are also getting paid. So why is he still using a broken wand? Daphne wondered. Unknown to her, she was actually correct. But Ron spent the money he received for a new wand on anything but a wand. Since then, he hasn't been able to ask his brothers or sister for money, and his parents refused. So he is stuck with the broken wand until he saves up for the rest of the year. As if she pretended she didn't see her friend blowing himself up, Hermione focused on Daphne's question. Harry has been acting strange since this year began. I need to know so he can return to normal. Stunned speechless by Hermione's answer, Daphne could only stare blankly at the girl. The answer was total nonsense, even with time travel involved. Everyone changes, and teens can change fairly rapidly in personality and moods. She would have thought Hermione of all people to know this. Only shaking her head as she left, Daphne achieved her aim, but could only question her sanity. When Harry slipped into the second-floor girls' bathroom where Myrtle was being herself and moaning, he quickly whispered in Parseltongue and hopped down the pipe. While there might be a way for stairs to appear, the slide was just faster for going down. Tumbling out at the bottom into a dirt pile and bones, Harry dusted himself off as he headed down the tunnel with discard skin. When the basilisk shedded its skin, due to its age and deterioration, it wasn't worth much, so Harry didn't have plans to harvest it. Opening the second door to the chamber, Harry took in the rows of snakeheads and the giant face at the back. The memories of his first fight replied in his head as he could only sigh at his weird luck. While it puts him in weird and deadly situations, it also carried him out mostly unharmed or where he will live. This was one of those times when he was 12 fighting the basilisk with a sword. Pulling out his Grandite scale wand, Harry quickly conjured a large mirror. With a bit more spell work and enlarging the mirror, he quickly hid. Come out and play, he called out in Parseltongue, hoping to call out the 1,000-year-old snake. As the sound of sliding and hissing soon followed, he believed it worked. Soon the sound of an upper body and head weighing a few hundred pounds crashing to the ground echoed throughout the chambers. Harry waited a few more moments before stepping out. Finding the basilisk dead in front of the large mirror, it was killed by its own killing gaze, as it was reflected back into itself.
Why didn't I do this last time?
Oh wait, because I had to battle a soul fragment and didn't know. Harry sadly shook his head before his hair stood on the back of his neck, rolling as a green bolt passed inches from his head. He sent a chain of spells back before looking. From a simple leg locking Jinx to bone-breaking curses, he soon found Ginny on the ground. Due to either his speed or dodging, she wasn't prepared, and got nailed by nearly all his spells. A black figure soon faded into view from her body, and Black Book into a 16-year-old Tom Riddle. Similar to his appearance like last time around, when he still had hair, good looks, and school robes, Harry beat out the young version of his grandfather. Harry Potter. A silky and almost tired-like voice came from the soul fragment. It would appear he didn't receive enough of Ginny's life force to speak clearly and confidently. The one and only. Now who are you? A parasite? Harry asked, since he technically wasn't supposed to know. No, Tom just shook his head as he tried to restrain his anger. Even if this meeting is happening far too soon for my liking, today is the day you die, Harry Potter. As Voldemort fired another killing curse, it had neither the speed or power behind it. Harry had no doubts it could kill, but it was one of the weakest killing curses he had ever seen. Calmly stepping out of the path, the soul fragment flickered as the young Dark Lord grimaced in pain. Clearly he wasn't as powerful as he thought, as he nearly erased himself with that one spell. Even if you skipped the whole Evil Lord spill, I will forgive you this time, Harry stated as he summoned the Black Diary to him. Due to being the first Horcrux and either to pride or something else, Voldemort didn't put much protection on it. So, the book flew effortlessly into Harry's hand, who ran towards the dead basilisk. Behind him, he could hear Tom raging as his wand refused to fire any spell or react at all. As the large fang punctured the book, Harry watched as the fragment glowed before exploding into millions of pieces. Great. Now, how do I get out? Harry thought as he looked at the unconscious Ginny. There was no way he was carrying her up fleets of stairs, nor tiring himself out, levitating her. In the end, he could think of one way to do this. Forks. After being lifted by the red and gold Firebird once again, Harry drops Ginny off at the hospital wing, saying he found her unconscious. From Madame Pomfrey's look, however, he doubts she believes him. She must have thought he did something else, which just made him roll his eyes. He does have some standards after all. The other fact to help his case, even if he was that caused it, was all his spells that hit her full force. He may have cracked or broken a few of her bones with the bone-breaking curse. Quickly being shooed out by the resident healer, Harry just made his way to the headmaster office. He had to deliver the news that the snake was dead, and it went pretty smoothly. Besides the lack of villain speech, an easy end to a Horcrux, when Harry stepped into the room, he was only expecting Dumbledore to be present. But Minster Fudge was present. By his side, a woman in pink was next to him, with the sickly sweet smile. A frown naturally appeared, as he didn't expect to see Umbridge so soon, and not a chance to take her out. "Mr. Potter, can't you see we are in a meeting?" A high-pitched sweet tone echoed throughout the room. As Harry saw Umbridge's cold, beady eyes peering down on him, he only rolled his eyes at her before ignoring her completely. In the near future, he will find a way to deal with her or make her disappear. "Can I help you, young Harry?" Albus said as his eyes told him later. "Oh, I completed the first stage of our Animagus training. I just got so excited that I want to show you." Harry lied, since he could transform his hands into talons of a phoenix a few fees ago. Dumbledore just smiled as the Minster looked impressed, while Umbridge looked like she swallowed something sour. Harry remembers looking while vague that Umbridge hated others more talented than her in magic. It was just buried under all her pure blood promotions despite being a half-blood. Harry soon got a few praises from Fudge before leaving. Later that night, in the Gryffindor common room, as Harry sat near the fireplace, due to being finished with his homework and planning his study groups, he has decided to relax by reading Dragon Ball manga, which he managed to convince Dumbledore to take him to mundane London a few hours before. Harry originally wanted to get the anime set to watch, but since Hogwarts was on several ley lines, electronics don't really work, so he just settled for the manga. It was also kind of sad for him, since it would be a few decades before he could get Dragon Ball Super, since it was what originally got him hooked on the series. For the current chapter, he was currently reading when Goku transformed into a great ape. Oolong has just managed to wish for women's panties to save the Earth from Emperor Pilaf. Wish. I wonder if I can make some Dragon Balls with alchemy. Naturally without wishing power, but it would still be cool to make, Harry thought as he put into his list of to-do. Harry, looking up from his manga in his hands, he saw a buck-toothed brown bushy hair girl. She was looking at him with a worried expression as she carried one of his slighter, darker books. Clearly, she was getting ready to accuse him of learning dark magic. "Yes, Hermione. Can I help you with something? Are you perhaps learning dark magic, Harry?" A dead gaze was the response as a blank look came over Harry's face. Of course he was learning dark, or like he says, gray magic. Most of the students were, or would, if there were a proper defense against the dark arts teacher. Since he was basically teaching the class, since Lockhart didn't teach, naturally he would have books laying around. A part of him was impressed that it took Hermione this long to accuse him, since it was already nearing December. "Yes, Hermione, I am. Is that a problem?" "Harry, it's dark magic. You have been acting differently this year, and I am worried about you. Even Ron is worried, since you haven't been hanging out with him as much," Hermione said with her really bossy tone, telling him she was nervous around him. "I'm worried that the dark magic is changing you. Hermione, I am 50 in a 12-year body, and an alpha of a new breed of werewolves. Of course I will change in personality." Harry thought, but gave a good reason to satisfy her. "Hermione, I am basically teaching the defense against the dark arts. Of course I need to learn what I am teaching others to defend against." As she bit her lip, Hermione didn't really want to accept the answer, but she knew it was true. Harry wondered how long it would take her to run off to Professor McGonagall, since Hermione was still in the worship stage and would go behind his back like with the firebolt. While she was right that it needed to be checked over, she could have talked to him after his excitement died down. Unknown to Harry, Hermione already brought the book and her concerns to McGonagall. She was turned down as she received a similar reply, "Why, he has the book." Dumbledore naturally informed most of the teachers about Harry borrowing books from him, so incidents like Hermione wouldn't blow up, which actually led to Hermione confronting him, since she couldn't get any of the teachers to help her. After appearing to be struggling, Hermione ended up stomping off, taking the book with her. Rolling his eyes at the display, he said, she better put his book back with his stuff. A huff was heard, but she complied before running up to her room. Harry returned back to his manga with a smile. Nearly a week went by since Harry killed the basilisk and ended this year's threat a few months earlier. It was currently the 1st of December, and the end of the competition between Harry and Lockhart. Gathered in the Great Hall, standing in front of the student body, he stood on Dumbledore right while Lockhart on his left. As many of you are aware, the two beside me were having a competition, Dumbledore announced. I had you vote throughout the week, and the results are in. A cheer went throughout the students as most already knew who would win. Since most knew that Lockhart was a fraud due to poor skills and Harry constantly hinting at it, I am proud to announce that Harry Potter has won by nearly 95%. It has been brought to the attention of the board that Lockhart has failed as an educator, so his contract has been terminated. A booming cheer filled the hall, making Harry's sensitive ears ring. As well, Katie's, Lockhart, being fired was big news, and an added bonus to the competition. After news of him being a fraud was found out, his popularity dropped immensely. Not only did it drop in the castle, but most of magical Britain, it was just Lockhart's lawyer barely scraping by, keeping it out of the daily profit, which didn't come cheap, so most of Lockhart's vault was empty, leaving him barely enough to scrape by, for now at least. But the way he spends on himself, it would last a week at most before he was scraping for 2 nuts. You can't do this to me. It is in my contract that you can't fire me without a good cause. Lockhart shouted silent the hall. Mr. Lockhart, you have not only failed to educate any of the students and annoy most of the staff with constantly bragging, you have even entered a competition with a 2nd year and lost in the subject. You're hired to teach, which if memories serve you, even slandered him from time to time. Dumbledore answered calmly, earning a few giggles from the spectators. Turning redder than a tomato, Lockhart pulled out his wand and aimed it at Harry. You have caused this. Prepare to pay. As the word obliviate was on the tip of Lockhart's tongue, Harry quickly reacted. With a swift roundhouse kick, Lockhart fell to the ground. His wand, which he was channeling through, stilled the memory charm, fell on his head. Where am I? Who am I? Really? Harry thought as he looked at Lockhart, who has erased his own memories once again. Only this time it was with his own wand and not Ron's. Shaking his head, Harry pitched his nose as he wondered how this might affect his near future. Once Rita gets a hold of this news, well, that's a problem for later. I'm hungry, Harry thought as he Madame Pomfrey carried off Lockhart. In Beauxbatons Academy of Magic, inside a private dorm room, a 15-year-old girl with silver hair sighed as she read the latest letter from Harry. The letter contained the results from the competition and Lockhart being fired and erasing his memories. While she is happy to know that Harry is having fun in their redo of life, she had to admit, at first, it was pretty interesting to return to the past. With being able to see everyone young and her younger sister again, now she also can see the downside of it. Having to perform her last 2 years of schooling again, well, isn't terrible, but it was boring. While she was fidgeting her at first, scores for a bit before raising her grades, revealing her true knowledge. Fleur wanted to head to Hogwarts and join the fun, not receive it through letters. Only half a year to go, Fleur groaned as she rubbed her thighs together. It has been a bit challenging to keep her instinct in control. While she could control them in her last life, well, for the most part, she was full grown by then. Now, with going back in time to her teenage years, her instincts and hormones were slightly out of whack. I should really invite Harry for Yule holidays. Not that we will be leaving my room if I have it my way. A smile formed as a new idea came to the front of Fleur's mind. As the smile grew more, she pulled out a parchment as she had a few letters to write. One to Harry and the other for her mother. From a small ledge, Hedwig just looked at the girl her master had been sending letters to over the last few months. A small part of her wondered how the two met, but she didn't really care, since she got bacon for the long trips. Back in Hogwarts, after the incident the following week with killing the basilisk, ending the Horcrux possessing Ginny, and beating Lockhart, Harry found himself attempting to flirt with Penelope, who found the attempt funny, since she found it adorable, much to the annoyance of Percy Weasley, who sat nearby. While it isn't well known the two were dating since her being petrified didn't happen, Harry was taking amusement in pushing the Weasleys' nerves. It might have taken a few months. He was starting to make his move to create chaos to the redheads. So Penelope, what do you say we find an empty classroom? Harry wiggled his eyebrows at the older girl. A slight blush took over Penelope's face, as it took a genius to see through Harry's intentions. A part of her just wondered how Harry could even suggest such a thing. "He is only 12, right?" ran through Penelope's mind as she looked at the growing black hair boy. Behind her, Percy looked as if he swallowed a lemon as his face burned with pure jealousy. With Harry's sensitive ears, he even heard a small growl of rage from the red-haired teen, which just made him smile even more. "Well, maybe some other time," Harry finally said before Percy reached for his wand. After his attempt at Penelope, Harry switched targets and tracked down Susan Bones, who was chatting with some first-year Hufflepuffs. The three seemed to be doing some homework for Charms, and Susan leading the group answering their questions. Silently walking up behind her, Harry made the motion to stay silent to the two first-years watching him, as they gave him a slight nod in understanding, which Susan somehow missed. Harry wrapped his arms quickly around the growing busty and beautiful second year. "Ah, haha, I got you." Harry's laughter was rewarded with a few slaps to his arms. Susan, who figured out who it was, calmed down with a small laugh of her own. "You got me. Now what are you going to do with me?" Harry just blinked. As well, the two first years at Susan's boldness. It was a few moments later she realized and blushed hard while attempting to run away. "You are my captive. You can't run away. It doesn't work like that," Harry said as he sat down, pulling the red-hair girl to his lap. Due to being a werewolf and his strength gradually growing as time passed, Susan was unable to break free from Harry's arms. Can we finish our work now?" one of the two Hufflepuffs asked. "Sure. Now what are you working on?" Harry asks, pulling a book nearby. For the next while, Harry taught the two some tips and tricks, which even Susan gained a few eureka moments. Outside of Hogwarts, inside the Malfoy Manor, an older version of Draco was pinching his eyebrows as he paced the room. Lucius Malfoy has found himself in a bind as not only his plan fell through, he lost something that the Dark Lord told him to guard. Unlike most of the wizarding world, he knew the Dark Lord would be back. After all, he did research what he was guarding, and found himself scared at the length his master went. In the corner, watching her husband pace, Narcissa Malfoy, a woman who aged gracefully. She was nice-looking for her age, with her tall, slim look and blue eyes. Unlike most in the House of Blacks, with dark-colored hair, she had light blonde hair. While she truly loved the man and their son, which she would go length to protect, she wasn't completely blind to his stupidity from time to time. While she would either attempt to fix it herself or help Lucius recover himself. The issue now was, however, she didn't know where to begin. After all, the Dark Lord wasn't known for forgiveness especially on important tasks. "What am I going to do?" "We will figure something out. There is still time before he returns, isn't there?" she asked. Rolling up his sleeve, a very faint mark was there, making him nod. It has grown a tad darker than in the last 12 years since his fall. Even so, it would take a few years at the current rate, a rate neither of them thought would last for long. "I hope so. I really do." When the night fell and the curfew sat in at Hogwarts, Harry found himself walking the empty corridors. Since his requirement to sleep is less due to his lycanthrope, his homework all caught up. He usually just trains his magic, both wand and wandless, in the common room alone. However, tonight he didn't feel like doing that, so he just wanders the halls. A few portraits chided him for being out during curfew, while others didn't care. With Harry's super senses, he didn't have to worry about the grumpy caretaker and his cat, so in the end he wasn't worried about being caught without the invisibility cloak or the marauder map, which reminded Harry that he needs to steal it back from the twins. Help! While Harry walked past a closet, the sound of crying could be heard between shouts. Opening the door, he found a young blonde-haired girl with puffy red eyes and thin pajamas. As she shivered from the coldness, Harry growled as Luna looked pale, half frozen to death. In the last life, Harry knew Luna was picked on, but not to this extent. Maybe she wasn't, and it was his time traveling back that did this, or she didn't bring it up. Lifting the girl into his arms, Harry headed towards the infirmary. She looked like she needed help from a professional. "I hope the culprits are punished. If not, I will punish them instead, which they won't like," Harry thought a bit darkly. After Harry dropped Luna off at the hospital wing, much to the grumbling of Poppy, she went straight to work on Luna after telling him off. In other words, he was kicked out after dropping the cute platinum blonde Ravenclaw off. Now returning to the closet, he found Luna in. Harry quickly turned into his wolf form. Even with his heightened sense in his human form, he could barely detect the faded smell of others. However, since he transformed, he could quickly identify who locked Luna in. Cho, Harry mentally sighed as he instantly recognized one smell. Even if the date he had with her went poorly, they remained decent friends after she moved on from Cedric. The other smell that was lingering about Harry didn't recognize right away. On one hand, he figures that they might be Cho's friends, or they might be other Ravenclaws. There was also a very faded smell of a couple girls being aroused. What to do? Harry wondered to himself. He might have had a friendship with her last time around. But now, they were strangers, besides from a few words, here and there when he hosted his study group. They need to be punished, but my original idea is out. Even if it is only because of my memories, I won't do something extreme this time. So no hanging them up in the Great Hall in their underwear. Harry pondered with a sigh. Well, even if I don't hang them up, I know a perfect pair of red heads that fit the bill. A smirk formed. When breakfast rolled around, Harry found himself standing next to Katie and Daphne as they spectated his handiwork. Surrounding them, most of the early risers were laughing at what was happening. Inside the Great Hall, both Fred and George were dangling from the ceiling from a piece of rope. As they panicked, the rope rotated them, sending them in a spiral to allow all to see their pink underwear. If that was all, it wouldn't have been bad, but Harry decided to add a bit of charm work. While he charmed their boxers to be pink and transformed through different forms of underwear, both males and females, written across the back, he added, Fred's or George's gateways to happiness. I didn't know they had that type of relationship, Daphne said, looking a bit green as she looked at Harry. How could she not recognize his handiwork after a decade of living together? It might explain a few things on why they're so close, Katie commented, also looking a tad green. Listening to the two girls' comments, Harry's mind drifted through his memory of his interaction with the twins. He, too, turned green, as it might not be true now. It could in the future if Fred didn't die. Harry, why does it look like Fred, or is it George underwear changing into a thong? Daphne asked as Harry's eyes drifted. It looks more like a G-string to me. Katie replied as a few students moved out of their way and ran out nearly puking. Not one of my brightest ideas, Harry said, as he slightly regretted adding such an option. A few minutes later, with most students looking ready to vomit, a teacher came by and rescued the two. However, the slight smirk on Professor Sprout's lips wasn't missed by anyone. She must have thought either their prank went wrong or someone finally getting back at them. While it wasn't so much of an issue like right after her first transformation, Katie seems to have gained the habit of going commando for at least a few days a week, usually when she wants to drag Harry to inspect an empty classroom. Soon after everything was settled and breakfast was served, Harry watched as Hedwig landed in front of him, handing her a piece of bacon as he took the letter from Fleur, which was written in French. He quietly read it over as a large grin took over. In the letter, it told how she was inviting him and Daphne over Christmas break. It also told how her mother conventionally bought her a new bed. She asked him to help break it in with her. Something good, Harry? Hermione asked as she tried to read his letter from over his shoulder. It was a few minutes later. She blushed hard before running away. Scanning the letter for magic, a bigger grin formed as he found a spell they messed around with in their last life. The spell was a fairly simple one, as it protected the letter from prying eyes. It basically made it so while Harry could see the original letter, someone like Hermione would see something else like a grocery list, or in this case, a heavy smutted letter. Fleur, isn't this a passage from one of those smut books you love to read? Harry thought as he read the passage. It basically read a very passionate scene of a threesome between two women and a male. Fleur always did like it when we did it with Daphne. Harry thought back on those lovely evenings. As he stoked Hedwig feather before taking off, Harry was looking forward to the coming weeks. After all, he had a hot villa waiting to break in a bed. It wasn't that Harry was desperate, but his incubus ancestry is basically demanding more womanly flesh. Katie and Daphne are nice and he absolutely loves it when he is with them, but he needed more. Now, since things weren't moving very fast on Susan or Penelope, Fleur invitations basically awoken something inside, an urge to dominate her and possibly break a few beds in the process. Breaking him out of his lust, a slender finger ran up his leg as Katie sat next to him. Lust filled her eyes as he smelt arousal and hunger for him, something he greatly welcomed, and a bit of pain from across the table. It's nearly class, you two, so make it quick if you must go. Daphne sighed as she watched the two nod and scamper off. A few moments later, as she was left alone at the Gryffindor table, she quickly followed them. The three barely made it to class on time, much to their professor's displeasure. "You wanted to see me, Madam Bones," a woman with nearly perfect curves and spiky bubblegum pink hair asked as she stepped into an office. Inside, a woman who appeared to be in her late 30s to early 40s was working on a stack of paperwork. With shoulder-length brown hair and her dark brown eyes, looked up at the entry with a monocle in one eye. She waved to the seat in front of her desk. "Yes, Cadet or Tonks?" Madam Bones paused as she looked over the 19-year-old woman in front of her. It was plain to see she was hesitant to send someone this young and lacking field experience. However, there aren't that many other candidates to send, as the only other Metamorphicus was nearing 70, which would be tricky for him to blend in for this mission. While this is never really done, it has been requested by Dumbledore. With the minister's permission, he has requested that an Auror guard be with young Harry Potter. As Tonks sat there stunned and confused at the request, she wondered why she was being told this. "Any reason, and why are you telling me this?" "It seems that Mr. Potter is going to France over the coming break. While Dumbledore believes Harry will be fine, he just wants as a precaution, and he nominated you as a choice," Madam Bones answered. "The French ministry isn't going to like a foreign Auror in their country," Tonks said, frowning. "True, but you're not going as an Auror but a bodyguard. Also, since you aren't actually interfering with them, they won't care and treat you as a tourist. Look alive, Cadet." In the brightly lit headmaster office, an Emerald Eye Wizard was split between fuming and jumping for joy. He just received news that Dumbledore basically requested a babysitter for him while he visited Fleur. The only saving grace for the aged wizard was because he happened to like who was picked. Nymphadora Tonks, the mother of his godson Edward Teddy Remus Lupin. A smile formed as memories of the clumsy metamorphoc shot to the front of Harry's mind, only to dim a bit as he remembers her marriage to Remus, his honorary uncle, which in Harry's opinion was used very loosely. Even under potions, Harry himself was married for nearly 20 years, so he could use that experience, and was almost sure the marriage between Tonks and Remus would have failed. The man almost ran away when his child was about to be born, and would have succeeded if not for Harry intervention. In the end, though, Remus did pull through at the very end, even if he didn't live until the end, at the Battle of Hogwarts. "I wonder how she will taste," Harry thought before his thoughts froze. "Puberty sucks." "How did you get Tonks picked for this?" Harry asked the aged wizard. Stroking his waist long white bead, Dumbledore chuckled with a twinkle in his eye. "I just recommended her, of course. I do remember her being quite the jokester during her time here, with her abilities. Of course, I did give Fudge a few reasons, such as being able to blend in with you and such. You do realize you are basically giving me a high-grade gift, right? What if I bed her during the time she is around? If you have the skills, then go for it." Such a reply from the Dumbledore naturally made Harry speechless. He meant it as a joke, but it seems that Dumbledore was able to return it with an extra kick. "Harry, you may be physically 12, even if you look a tad older. However, you are a time traveler from when you were 50. As such, I am going to treat you as a 50-year-old and trust you to make the right choices. So you're treating me as the oldest second year to ever attend Hogwarts? I believe Merlin is the oldest at nearly 300, Dumbledore answered. "Ha!" Harry just sarcastically laughed. While it was true that Merlin attended while fairly old, he was also among the first batch of students. The man was curious until his death in his late 600, and it wasn't even from natural causes. Merlin mistakenly picked the wrong tea leaves and poisoned himself by accident. "Do you need something else, Harry?" "No, that will be all." "Then have a nice evening. It is a beautiful full moon tonight." Dumbledore smiled as Harry looked away for a second. It's easy to tell that it slipped Harry's mind that it was a full moon. "Oh, and Harry, the ones responsible for Luna being trapped will be punished properly," as if a weight was lifted off his shoulder which Harry didn't know he was carrying. He left the office with his spirits high before making a run back to the tower. It was already fairly late, and he and Katie needed to get out into the forest to transform. Out in the Forbidden Forest, as the moon rose on the horizon, Harry was in his loosely fitted clothes, walking beside a naked Katie Bell, her dirty blonde hair flowing in the wind as her chocolate brown eyes that held hints of being serious. "Katie, you do know we can wear loosely fitted clothes when we transform?" "Yes, since you say it every month, but I will answer the way I did previously," Katie answered, almost drawing it out that would make a certain potion master proud. I like how the night breeze caresses my naked body as I bear it out in the open. Harry rolled his eyes at the nymphomaniac that he bonded himself with. However, they didn't have time as the moon was rising fast. Naturally, she pouted as her ploy didn't work, but Katie didn't have long before a familiar warmth filled her body. The rays of the full moon reached down on them, rapidly transforming them. Within moments where the two stood, two mighty wolves now stood proudly. Over the last few months, Harry's form rapidly grew and was a tad bit bigger than a gray wolf. Now with his lushful midnight fur and lightning bolt over his eye, he was truly looking the part of his alpha status. Behind him, Katie stood with her head lowered to the ground as if bowing before him. Her rump was up in the air as her tail wagged. With a loud and mighty howl that echoed in the distance, Harry looked at the dark brown wolf beside him. Normally, they would play and roughhouse a bit throughout the night. However, similar to human forms, their wolf form also was in their young teens, so he could smell Katie's arousal and want, but Harry barely could stop himself. Spring is going to be bad, Harry thought to himself before the sound of sticks breaking echoed into his ears. Growling at whatever was nearby, Katie also stopped her playing and growled as she stood a few feet back. In the bushes, a large spider the size of a boulder stepped out, followed by its brothers and sisters. Not hesitating as Harry remembers the time they tried to eat him the last time around, he felt his claws smashing down on its head, nearly crushing it to paste. With a mighty roar, Katie also launched forward as the urge to hunt became the dominant thought. Agility dodging the incoming fangs and legs, both Harry and Katie ran circles around the nearly 15 spiders, biting and clawing as they saw the openings while taking on some scratches from failed dodges. Harry killed the last one as his powerful jaws crushed down on the small spider head, letting out a victory howl as they had won the battle. Harry looked around only to see more have appeared, and a tidal ale of them could be seen coming by tree. We need to retreat. Neither I nor Katie is strong enough yet to win this fight, Harry thought as he and Katie dashed into the bushes, disappearing from there. After they retreated and entered another territory, the two wolves found themselves among a herd of unicorns. While their blood and thoughts were still wanting to hunt, Harry quickly led Katie away. After all, it wouldn't be good if she cursed herself by letting her instincts run free. For the rest of the night, the two roamed the forest, entering and exiting multiple beasts' territory. Back at the castle in the Gryffindor common room, a bushy-hair bookworm was frowning as she stared at the entrance. She was wondering where Katie and Harry disappeared, since it was after curfew and they weren't back yet. Did they get in trouble, or were they up to something? As Hermione's mind was worried, she began wondering if she should get a professor. However, she didn't want her housemates to get in trouble, but also not causing trouble, especially since Harry was acting differently this year. What do I do? She whispered to herself. In the dungeons, a certain blonde with slick back hair was wallowing as he curled himself up. Over the last few months, he noticed that Harry Potter has changed, and it was easy to see. What was worse, he barely reacted to him anymore, even when he picked a fight with the weasel. Why does it feel my role has declined? Draco couldn't shake this feel, and it terrified him, even if he didn't know the cause of his feelings. As the month of December inched closer to Yule holiday, Harry was seen smiling more, as it was growing rarer to see him not smiling all the time. Most of the students and a few professors thought he was just excited for the holidays. For those that know of the reason, they could only shake their heads. Harry's reason for smiling was naturally because he couldn't wait to see Fleur again. He couldn't wait to see her in person and what the reunion will bring. He was also looking forward to the reunion of his distant cousin Nymphadora Tonks. Harry was currently stumped on how to seduce her for a night or two, so he just put that plan on hold for the time being. After all, she will be with him for the last half of the year, and he wasn't in a rush with her. Scarhead, what are you so happy about? Did you drop that insufferable mudblood? A slicked-back blonde hair boy said loudly. Other students naturally were drawn to the next verbal battle between Potter and Malfoy. No, or not yet, Harry thought. Your mother was singing praise about me last night on her knees. A slightly green look nearly appeared on Harry's face after the words came out. While Narcissa looked good for her age, she wasn't anyone he wanted or plans to sleep with, ever. Some of the older students and others that caught the meaning went, "Oh," and burst out laughing. Draco, on the other hand, Harry noticed, didn't get the meaning, which Harry didn't blame him for. After all, they were 12, with most wizarding kids being sheltered most of their life. Why would my mother kneel before you, Potter? The loud roar of laughter made Draco go beet read that Harry almost thought he was part Weasley. It was the same redness that Ron got when embarrassed or angry in a jealous episode. Are you a blonde, Weasley? You turn the same shade of them when angry? Instead of answering, Draco just stomped away as he knew he couldn't win in a duel, even if it pains him to admit that Potter was an expert and knew his stuff about data. Hello, Penelope. Where is your follower? When Harry found Penelope alone in an empty classroom after classes, his sensitive hearing could hear her soft cries. As his emerald eyes fell onto her puffy dark brown ones, he could tell something has hurt her deeply. Percy isn't my follower, he is just my ex now, pretending to be shocked at the news. I didn't realize you two were dating. Percy wanted to keep it on the down low so it wouldn't get in the way of him being perfect in studies. Penelope explained, I was fine with that, but after a while he began treating me as some sort of prize. He didn't even have the nerves to admit to his family he was dating. Harry thought back to the last time around and could give her a sympathy nod. When she was petrified, Percy never even stated it then. It was like he was caught with his hand in the cookie jar. Maybe that was why they broke up in the future. There are plenty of other apples on the apple tree. You just happened to pick a rotten one this time. Don't you mean fish in the sea? Shaking his head, why would you want a fish? Who knows how many times it has been caught and released. Now with an apple, once picked it could grow into a beautiful tree. Chuckling at his words, Penelope wiped away her tears, giving Harry a smile. She wondered how a 12-year-old could be so mature with this. It almost felt like he was an old soul in a young, fit body. I'm just worried about my magic now. So she slept with Weasley. Harry thought mentally, nodding. He could understand as it was fairly common for couples to do so. You do know that is just a myth, right? Your magic grows from use and experience while you grow older. But my father said, Penelope, name one father that would be happy to see their daughter's scared flower picked, Harry asked. Penelope paused as his words ran around her thoughts as she bit her lower lip, making her look cute. Grabbing the back of her hand, Harry looked up at her. If you want, I could make you forget. With a slight hesitation, Penelope accepted. Harry muttered to himself as he grew more perverted by the day. I hate puberty. The following morning, Harry found himself being dragged off into an empty classroom by Penelope, sprouting a small blush as she looked at him, shifting nervously. After a few moments, however, she gained confidence in herself. Harry, yes? What happened last night can't continue, she stated as Titcher eyes never wavered. Oh, how come? I'm 17 and a 7th year and you're only 12 and a 2nd year, while you're nice and a good friend among other things. It's just not enough to wait 5 years? Harry finished as she nodded rapidly. To be honest, Harry never actually thought of having any girl wait on him. He just figured they could have their fun for a while and move on. There is still half a year left, so we can be friends with benefits until we part ways as good friends. Penelope looked at Harry as if wondering how he could be so mature and even knew some things. However, she soon put her thoughts aside and nodded in agreement. After all, it would be a shame to deny such an offer. We never really did consider 5th and 7th years. Last time around, I knew some girls released dressed masturbating. I never really considered it since we had that Toad woman for our 5th year and Death Eaters for our 7th, Daphne said with a sad sigh. She was too busy studying and protecting her virginity from the Death Eater teachers and students. Just because you can't remember every small details of what you learn and read, don't make dumb. It just means you're human and not a walking library, Harry said, trying to cheer her up as he handed his rough hands down her cheek. Thanks for the cheer up. Even if it wasn't needed. Daphne laughed before pecking him on the cheek. Now I'm off to the library. I nearly got everything ready so we wouldn't make that grimoire. Really? You forgot your own idea, didn't you? Daphne sighed but still smiled. Anyways, she knew he was fairly busy preparing for his study groups, plotting against the Weasleys even if he only pranned the twins and taking care of a few other things. So she didn't really blame him as he was only human after all. Also, who doesn't sprout off ideas from time to time and never follow through? It's nearly time for us to leave for Yule break. Do you have another prank for the Weasley squad? Daphne asked, hoping it wasn't another nightmare-inducing one. The image of the teens in thongs still haunted her and other students. Maybe I learned something interesting from Penelope about Percy Weasley. Harry quietly explained, making Daphne burst out laughing. Now I can't wait to see what you got planned. Luna, how has it been going in Ravenclaw? It's been good since Professor Flitwick chewed everyone out Now the Nargles are also restrained. Luna cheerfully answered, I wonder what spell he did to keep them restrained. Chuckling at how serious she looked, Harry tried to remember if any Nargles were ever discovered in the future. The most he can recall is a small article in the Daily Prophet, which Luna wrote after discovering a statue of a fairy somewhere in Russia.
I'm sure you will learn it at some point in the future.
I hope so. Nargles are thieves and tricky business. Luna nodded. That they are. Susan Bones was in a bind and unsure what to do about it. She couldn't go to the professors as she was too embarrassed to say what she saw. The sight of her yearmate and an older student doing it in an empty classroom was burned into her mind. To make it even bigger, it was Harry Potter who was the one initializing it. The fable boy who everyone in the wizarding world who either praised or grew up listening to storytime books about, while her aunt has told her that the stories were fake. Susan knew some of her schoolmates believed they were real. Now, however, she was debating if the one about Harry Potter in the Crystal Castle was real, where he captures beautiful women and keeps them captive, having his wicked ways with them. Maybe reading one of her aunt's hidden books wasn't a smart idea. Now, besides blushing the entire time reading, she couldn't stop dreaming about taking the place of one of the women. Am I turning into a pervert? The fear of being a pervert ran through Susan's young preteen mind. Due to years of listening to her aunt rant about failed dates and perverted men, she naturally associated having naughty thoughts as being bad. Maybe, if I confront him, I could fix his pervertness before my aunt finds out. Susan whispered to herself. So this is Tonks, the mother to Teddy. Daphne thought as she made a small note in her black notebook. While Harry has told her stories with Fleur about Tonks, who died during the Battle of Hogwarts, Daphne has never met her and was naturally interested, and by the look in Harry's eyes, he naturally has a plan and hope of betting her in the future. Now she could see why they always smiled whenever they mentioned her. The girl was either joking or trying to tease Harry in a flirty tone. Naturally, Harry was fairly immune until clothes began to come off. Since Fleur trained him that way, the attempt was there, which just made the whole thing funny as the woman got flustered. Tonks, are you feeling okay? Your cheeks are red? Daphne heard Harry say as his hand held Tonks' red cheek and rubbed teasily. I'm fine. A childish huff was heard from her. If you say so. Harry laughed as he withdrew his hand, but not before running nunchuck fingers down her cheeks. Harry, you better stop as you're coming off creepy. Fine, but she smells so nice. Daphne just laughed as she just shook her head at him. So Tonks, have you ever been to France? No, but I did receive a few letters a few months ago by a girl called Fleur. I thought it was a prank, so I never responded, and the letter kept coming before they stopped. Nevadora answered. Oh, Daphne looked a bit surprised. Did Fleur want to give her to Harry? Yeah, but I later learned it wasn't a prank, and it would kind of be awkward to respond after so long. I'm sure if you sent her a picture of you, she wouldn't mind the wait. Daphne laughed. Even Harry agrees. Though I think it because Fleur would send him a copy with her own picture included, Daphne thought as she looked down at her growing buds. Soon. You guys are weird, Tonks said seriously, wondering if these two were actually 12. They act far older than many of her current friends, though their jokes remind me of my mother's cousin, Is Black. As the Hogwarts Express pulled into the train station, the river of students joined the sea of parents. As the doors opened, smiles and cheers of parents could be heard from seeing their children after 4 months. The older students calmly greeted their parents with a quick hug before leaving. Still on the train as they waited for the flood to die down, Harry looked on the platform. Memories of waiting for his children filled his mind before he pushed them away. The loneliness he felt as they were away washed away as they appeared, stepping off the train, breaking out of thought as Daphne tugged on his clothes. Harry followed her off the train, with Tonks following behind them. So she didn't see the harm in teasing him with it, unknowingly moving up Harry's plan to conquer her over and over again. Even if I don't know you that well yet, all I gotta say is poor Tonks. Daphne thought, mentally shaking her head at the older girl's actions. When they entered the ministry, Nymphadora naturally stopped her actions, since it could cause unnecessary trouble for her. Heading towards the portkey, registration as a portkey to France was waiting for them. The French Minister of Magic had it arranged for them as far Tonks understands. She didn't understand why they did, and it was not necessary for her to know either. A portkey under Delacour. Tonks told the middle-aged wizard behind the counter. Here it is. The man shrugged as he pulled out a mundane Playboy magazine. Here you go. On the cover was a half-naked woman with only a blanket covering her front, allowing the back and part of her hips to be seen. She was fairly pretty, but to Harry and Daphne, who used to have future hairstyles and clothes, it was like comparing early 2000s video games to 2020s games, so it was mostly a nostalgic feeling. Are you that excited to see the cover, Harry? Tonks asked, slightly teasing him as she pushed it into his face. I don't know, why don't you check? Maybe lose a few layers of clothes so we can test it a few times. With a quick 2 slaps to his arms, both Tonks and Daphne slapped him. Daphne because he said in front of a middle-aged man who gained a long look in his eyes as he looked at Tonks. As for Tonks, she was embarrassed at such a suggestion. To make it worse, it was in front of one of the big ministry gossipers. Let's just go, Harry mumbled as they grabbed the magazine. What the password? Tonks asked the man, who shrugged and shook his head. Breaking in the bed, Harry and Daphne said as they felt a pull from their stomachs. In nearly an instant, Harry and Daphne found themselves in a flower field. Tonks, on the other hand, found herself upside down. Hello, Flower. I missed you, Harry said as he captured Flora's lips with his own. What? Was all Tonks could say about what just happened. It's about time you got here, Flora said after breaking the kiss. It felt like time was moving a snail pace the last few weeks, Harry said. So how have you been, love? Missing your touch. Now come along. Join me in the pool. But I didn't bring a swimming suit. Daphne pouted as she pecked Fleur on the cheek as a greeting. Who says you need one? Harry is the only male in the surrounding 100 miles. Father won't be back until after midnight, which is 7 hours away. Fleur answered. Huh, Tonks said as she fainted from pure confusion at what was happening. Her mind was also fuzzy as she looked at the girl. Oh, she fainted. I guess Mother can watch her and my sister as we play in the pool. Fleur sighed as Harry levitated the bubblegum hair woman after dropping Nymphadora Os inside the manor and greeting Apolline and Gabrielle. Harry appeared near the pool. Next to it, he also found another set as he heard splashing in the pool. Inside, he watched as a bare Fleur and Daphne splash each other. Join us, Harry, Fleur said as she wiped the water from around her eyes. She had no intentions of covering herself as it was only him and Daphne around. I like this view, though. Well, you will get this view a lot more in the future. Fleur answered. Fleur, you aren't doing a good job at getting me in the pool, Harry grinned. Oh, who says that isn't my goal? Later, now it is playtime, Daphne said as she splashed Fleur. The sound of laughter and splashing could be heard as a three-way water war